Hi everyone, welcome back to Nasedyanka, the channel where I talk about Bulgarian history, tradition, culture, faith, and so forth related to Bulgaria. So this is episode 19, part 2. We will talk today about the stone megaliths of the Americas. This is based on a lady who comes out under the name of Alia Osho. I am including her main website for the article that I've translated and I'm sharing here with you guys. I'm including that in the comments section. This is regarding the ancient Bulgarians who were the first settlers in the Americas. So today we will talk about the stone megaliths. The Olmecs or Olmeca natives were a highly developed civilization, as we are told. They were also known for their huge granite sculptures of helmeted heads. Those were similar in size and culture to the construction and the stone barigon heads of Guatemala, as well as the infamous stone Moai heads from the eastern islands of South America, and the clavos heads from Peru's stone sacred city of Caven de Huantar. So I'm gonna make a side note here. As I mentioned in episode 19, part 1, last time, there are many similarities between Bulgarian words and those places or peoples that the ancient Bulgarians left a mark on. So, for example, we just mentioned the clavos, which is the heads from Peru's stone sacred city of Caven de Huantar. Well, clavos or glavos, glavas, this is actually glava, is a Bulgarian word that literally means heads. And the interesting thing is that Los clavos stand for the heads from Peru's stone sacred city. So let's look at a few pictures here. So you guys can see some pictures, you can research them, they're popular. To this day and time, archaeologists are clueless as to the how. How were these built? How could the ancients possibly transport such massive, huge structures that must be weighing around 15 to 25 tons, is what this article is saying. For instance, also the megalithic architecture of ancient pre-Columbian cities of Bolivia, Tiahuanaco and Pumapunku. These, I'll show you a picture in a moment, but there are two ancient cities that are considered an absolute challenge to modern architecture. So let's take a look at that picture. So the article also shows us many more pictures. For example, these buildings that were built of stone blocks of between 1 to 400 tons. And on top of that, they were transported by some unknown means from a quarry 10 miles away to the shores of Lake Titicaca. So let's look at a picture of Pumapunku in Bolivia. So you guys just saw a picture of Pumapunku in Bolivia. The blocks there are also huge and of an unusual shape, specially carved to connect the blocks in an unbreakable 3D connection without the need of soldering materials. And by the way, the local natives told the Spanish conquistadors that the giants had built these stone cities. So, one of the first evidences of the power and strength of the ancient Bulgarian giants is preserved to this date in the Olmec rock paintings in the Yuxtlahuaca cave in Mexico. I'll show you a picture in a moment. As you look at that picture, take a careful look at the image. Basically, notice the rug colors, the clothing or the rug of the person that the person is appearing to wear, because we will talk about this directly, and I'll show you more pictures of how it resembles Bulgarian culture. Okay, so you guys just saw this picture of a cave painting. So in that rock painting, the huge figure is of a ruler that can be seen. And this ruler was dressed in a garment much like a woven Bulgarian rug. And I'll show you pictures of the rugs in a little bit. Besides, on top of all of this, the skeletons that were found in that cave were buried in the body postures that are characteristics of our Bulgarian burials. That's an extended body for men and a body that's curled in the embryonic position for the women. All of America is littered with the remains of the ancient giants who came to these lands in antiquity and who built the numerous pyramids. They were by large red-haired, light in skin, 8 to 12 feet tall, in other words, tall and robust, clad in leather armor, and they were often buried with their swords. In other episodes, I talk about the Bulgarian treasures, and I will talk more about Bulgarian burials, the Thracian burials. So stay tuned. So there was also a flat pyramid that's called Spiros Hill or Spiros Hill. Let's see the picture. Okay, so this Spiros Hill or Spiros Hill basically resembles those Bulgarian typical burials like I mentioned earlier. And now I'm going to show you the pictures of Bulgarian weaving tradition, which is thousands of years old. And so basically we weave those into rugs, but also into aprons, which are very traditional and typical of Bulgarian women. That's why I became creative where I live, and I was using the local materials. And like I said, this is not these colors are not the traditional, style that you'll see in Bulgaria. This is not Bulgarian clothing attire, but I did follow my Bulgarian traditions clothing style to pattern and sew this, because again I wanted to use the local materials. So let's look at Bulgarian rugs here. All right, so you guys were able to see that the colors are quite rich and decorative that traditionally Bulgarians would use. So here I'm going to talk a little bit history. So in 1520, a well-documented travelogue appeared in Mexico by Magellan, who recounted his encounter with his crew with a 10-foot tall giant. Magellan later learned from the locals that the giant belonged to a neighboring tribe. 85 years later, Francis Drake told of several red-haired men who were unusually tall in comparison to that place's local people, and this article is showing us a picture. Let me show you that. So you guys just saw the picture from that time, 1520, and how much bigger that giant appears to the other people, the locals. When the conquistadors attacked the Incas, they were astonished basically to be greeted by the natives and to be perceived as quote-unquote gods. So this has been recorded, is what this is telling us. Now hear this. The natives called the conquistadors Viracocha. Well, the natives considered them to be those same ancient Bulgarian sea travelers, huge European people with red hair and blue or green eyes, who centuries ago had set foot on the American soil, and they had brought their skills in agriculture, construction, goldsmithing, and literacy, and so forth to the Native Americans. And then the story goes that those Europeans suddenly left across the sea as they had come in boats. And again, those are not the West Europeans, we're talking about East Europeans. They're older, they're the ancestors. We're talking about ancient Bulgarians. And Bulgarians, I've mentioned in other series, but I'll share it here again. The word stands from Aryan. So this is the people of the light, of enlightenment. This is literally what it means meant in our language. So if you guys have watched my other episodes, you will easily know that. So those ancient Bulgarians left that bright mark on the culture of American settlers who followed them, the natives. The Bulgarian trace is still visible among many of the ancient American religious codes and rites, actually, which have been preserved to this date in the Native American population, as they inherited them from the ancient Bulgarians, who were the first inhabitants of the American continent. And I'll show you pictures of that later. The similarity between the Native American folklore, costumes, which continue to be dotted with the Bulgarian unique color combinations and the Bulgarian unique traditional clothing, is just impeccable. So let's look at some traditional Bulgarian clothing. I'll show you a bunch of pictures here. Okay, so you guys just saw a couple of pictures of Bulgarian clothes. Let's look at Mayans and their traditional costumes. And this is coming from this particular article that I'm translating, but if you wish to research them in other sources, please do so, and please feel free to share in the comment section. So Mayans in their traditional costumes. After the Mayans, let's look once again at a couple more, 2 to 3 more pictures of, actually I have 4, I'll show you, of Bulgarian traditional clothes. Now look at these women from the Andes in their traditional clothing attire. And look at the flowers that they wear around their heads. We in Bulgaria to this date are still wearing that. So let's take a picture. So I'm hurrying here. Let's look at the traditional men's costume or clothing attire from the island of Tequile, Peru. And now that you saw a man in that type of clothing, let's look at the Bulgarian traditional clothes for Bulgarian men. Okay, what's typical about them are several very peculiar things, which, by the way, I speak of more in depth in episode 17 in all the series that I'm slowly adding there, because I focus on Bulgarian clothing in that episode. If you guys are interested in learning more about Bulgarian clothing, please refer to episode 17 and its series. I am adding them slower over time because I am working on several episodes and they're series all at the same time, and I also have a full-time job. But I can just bring your attention to this. They're all wearing white shirts. That's traditional, typical for Bulgarian shirts. We all have a white undershirt. Then there is a jacket or a vest for guys, and for women it's a dress, a vest, or a we call it brachnik, like a skirt kind of a form. And women always wear aprons, typically wear aprons. Guys have a poyas. It's a very thick woven belt. around their waist, and there are coins. There are lots of handkerchiefs or head kind of or bigger towels made from cotton. It's everything used to be woven. Bulgarians had long-standing tradition of weaving not only the textile, the yarn to make the sheets, but also weaving those clothes around their bodies. So we don't use as many buttons and zippers as nowadays. Modern, clothes add them, of course, we do nowadays. But traditionally, we would just weave to keep all the clothing around our bodies. So many of those in the Americas still have that. Um, so on top of that, here's another clothing. Let me show you this. So this is something that's interesting. So I once met a friend from Northwest America who had ancestors from the Ojibwe Native American tribe. So I naturally started researching who the Ojibwe natives were and what clothes they wore. And this is what I came up to. So this particular dress, you can see it's black. It has embroidered flowers. This is very traditional for Bulgarians. Something that the author in this particular picture did not include, yet I noticed over the 25 years of experience living abroad, is this curious fact. The website shows a Native American traditional embroidery of a dress. Like I said, it was described as follows. They said, and I'm reading this: summer road trip, next stop, the American West. We continue our series with a historical and cultural tour of the American West. And then somebody else left a comment saying that that's not from the American West, it is from the Annishinaabe people of the Midwest and Northeast. They live around the Great Lakes and above. It is a very typical woodlands design. They say sheesh exclamation mark. I will include that in the comments section. Again, the websites for you guys to look at. So we gathered that it was Native American, perhaps not from the West, like I was led to, in my exploration, but it was Native American of Native American origin. So let's see a similar nusia, our traditional clothing in Bulgarian language. We call them nusias. So let's see another picture here. Okay, so what you guys just saw is a traditional Thracian Bulgarian nusia. Again, it has the white long dress underneath and the black on top, which we call sukman. It's kind of like an apron dress, and it's all embroidered with flowers. There are so many different types, as many as there are people, and I can't even say villages. The diversity in Bulgaria, small as our country nowadays looks, is huge, and the flowers stand out. But let's see another one that I found on the internet when I was looking for Native American outfits. Okay, so you guys just looked at one that's in red and black, and let's look at the Bulgarian traditional, once again, Thracian Bulgarian dress that has been advertised at one of our Bulgarian stores online, balkanfolk.com. Again, I'm including their website. If you guys are interested in looking at more Bulgarian clothes, feel free to do so. So you could see I included several actually. One of those that you saw was a picture, like a cartoon. It's a color coming from a coloring book for children to learn about their origin in Bulgaria. And so you could see on one of those pictures is a girl wearing a red traditional Bulgarian dress with the black apron, and it also shows the region where she comes from. And the other picture had a similar but slightly different design, but still similar idea of that same dress from that region. So I'll show you a few more here. Now I'm switching back to going to what the internet showed me from the Ojibwe women's dresses. And again, here is an Ojibwe strap dress. And I will just share with you a few Bulgarian pictures of Bulgarian national clothes that resemble the color combination, the patterns, but they are not the only ones. We have so many more. At some point, I'll show you more pictures of some of the most mystical Bulgarian clothing. I have not included them here, but I'll make separate videos about them. Let's look at the ones I have for right now. Okay, so you guys could see the diversity in color as well as the blues and the oranges, but then the whites and the reds and so forth and so forth. Okay, so that was just a little bit of an insight into the clothing. But what about the stonework? What is strange is that no one from our official archaeology dares to look at the facts or even make the slightest suggestion nowadays that the ancient Bulgarian giants were the builders of these stonework perfections. Despite the traditional Bulgarian stonework that existed from the deepest antiquity until nowadays, despite the obvious fact that the civilizations of the Incas, Mayans, and other Native American tribes were not the original creators of these unique stone structures, but that they indeed inherited them from the first settlers on the American continent, which are the ancient Bulgarians in this article, as this article is describing. It is remarkable. There is a book that's called Forbidden Archaeology, and so a famous Austrian researcher, Klaus Donner, provides irrefutable evidence that the American natives were not the original creators of the ancient stone civilization of the American continent. Nonetheless, the Native Americans, like those already, like even like the peoples around the world, I mentioned in a different video, the Indians in India, the Chinese in China, the Egyptians, and so forth. They're basically the zealous guardians of the great stone antiquity, which they inherited from the ancient Bulgarians, but which they did not continue to develop. But they guard it. And I think a sad piece of news for me here is that my own Bulgarian counterparts, at least Bulgarians I've met abroad, tend to express either that they don't know about our history, or they're ashamed, or they just don't want to wear our Bulgarian clothes. But in the same token, I have met with people from Korea, with people from India, with people among the Native Americans in America, amongst many others, who somehow know much more about Bulgaria than even myself, Americans included. And so I think that this is, for me, that was really shocking and awakening. And I think it's something that we need to pay attention to. It's also that the Native Americans proudly show that to the world as a tourist attraction, those things, the stonework and other stuff that I'll talk about later. And they show it in contrast to the modest Bulgarians of today, whose ancient heritage is deliberately destroyed, even buried, stolen, exported abroad, appropriated, even denied, and sometimes even ridiculed by our own Bulgarian heirs. This is heart-wrenching to me. Nonetheless, as we say, the legs of lies run short. In other words, sooner or later, truth shall prevail. The truth reveals itself, and so the literal bright ancient Bulgarian light or enlightenment of my ancestors still shines over the majority of the peoples around the earth, and the traces that they have left behind are still existing. They're there, they're living, no matter what no matter what we know or what people say, you can run your own research basically. So with this, I'm going to stop here to keep this short. Basically, you could see in this episode a little more than the stone megaliths. We did look into the clothes, I included that. Next time, I'll talk about the crafts. And yes, clothing can be considered crafts, but I put it together with the stonework because of the cave depictions that were depicting clothing attire, right? But crafts also relates to working metal and other things like that. So we'll talk about this in the follow-up part 3. So stay tuned if you're still interested. I hope that you have a great day. As always, if you have any comments or questions, please share them in the comment section. And please check in the comment section for the websites that I'm using or the books that I'm referring to, because I'm not making up any of this information. I am simply gathering it from the Bulgarian language, and I'm doing my best to translate it to you guys in the English language. So thank you so much. I appreciate you for your time. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and we'll see each other soon. Bye bye.